So welcome at the MIC Brussels, Microsoft Innovation Center Brussels. This is an initiative from the Brussels region. So I would like to jump on just what I heard. So Brussels is a city full of bureaucrats. Not only bureaucrats, and I'm really delighted to tell you that we have the highest rate of entrepreneurs by 1,000 inhabitants for many good and also bad reasons. So we are very happy of this. But we are also lucky for many other reasons. First reason being that we have plenty of large companies. If you compare the size of Brussels to other cities all over Europe, there is no other city of this size with such an international environment, with plenty of large companies, plenty also of very big administrative, European Commission and so on. All those people consuming a lot of IT products. So this is very interesting. Of course, we have plenty of IT companies. We have also 4 university, 4 engineer school. So on one hand you have the customer, on the other hand we have the competences, and on the other side we have plenty of international people, traveling to Brussels, staying in Brussels, getting married in Brussels, making kids. So those second and third generation, you take a look on the CV and you see they are fluent in 6 languages. Fantastic. You won't be able to find this anywhere else in the world. So Brussels is a great place to start a business for sure. So we also have a series of non-profit organizations, and like my friend with the Betagroup for working. Also, people starting ecosystem to foster entrepreneurship, like my other friends here, Leo X there with Westartups. And also, you have some public bodies willing to work like entrepreneurs, trying to be dynamic, trying not to act like a public body saying this is the offer, but on the other hand trying to listen to the entrepreneurs and say what can we do for you in order to ease your business, the start of your business, and to stimulate the growth. For this reason, we decided with Leo Exter, with Ramon, with Jean Dorelli, and other people at the MIC that we had to work together. So we sit around the table and we decide to sign a memorandum of understanding stating clearly that we want to be complementary. We were looking for complementary assets, complementary competences in order to make sure that we coordinate to work and that we are able to offer a unique selling proposal if you want to start your business, if you want to grow your business, combining all the different added value that we are able to deliver. So you will find a form, I think they received the form, and this form is based on the potential problem you could face when you start an IT business or when you try to grow an IT business from Brussels. I suggest that you tick the different kind of added value you would like to receive, and we would be really happy to supply with you with the added value. And of course, we are in a world of open innovation. If you enter one member of the memorandum, the people who signed the memorandum of understanding, you will easily travel from one body to the other, making sure that you capitalize on all the value we are able to offer you from Brussels. So that's one very important thing. You can scan the QR code here to jump on the form, and you can tick what you're looking for, and we will be delighted to help you growing your business or help you to start your business. I would like also to insist that we have some fantastic people here today. We have a famous guest from the United States, another famous guest from Germany. We have also Marcel Klaas from Amsterdam. Hello, Marcel, the American Chamber of Commerce of Brussels. I was not expecting to see you today, but feel welcome. I don't know, I think it's your first time at the Microsoft Innovation Center. Be welcome. And I hope you will have a great, interesting afternoon. And if you came by, it's certainly to ask questions, so feel free to ask this question. And we have also here the representative of the Brussels region in San Francisco, so make sure to fire him with plenty of interesting questions. How can we make business with Silicon Valley? How can we dreaming to one day have a foot in the Silicon Valley? Why not? So make sure to ask any kind of question you would like to ask about your business. Okay, I think I have to give the mic to.
So just a few words on the agenda. There you can see the 5 different sessions that are organized for you this afternoon. So you're going to start at 1:30 with the session organized by Brussels Invest and Export and ABE with Mr. Horning. In a few minutes we're going to present the content to you. Maybe Bruno, you want to say a few words on the session?
Yes, so we are very happy to have one of our main partners. I'm not only chairing the executive committee of the MIC, but I'm also the operational director of the Brussels Entreprise Agency. One of our closest partners is the Brussels Invest and Export. It's a great team of people trying to export Brussels product and services today, but also to try to convince investors that Brussels is the right spot to start a greenfield investment, and of course the United States is one of our main targets. So the deal is really to talk with you today about the potential of those markets, about the way to attack those markets, and to really talk about one of the axles for growing a company, it's internationalization. We are basing our activities at the Brussels Entreprise Agency on what we call the headache of the people, of the entrepreneurs. And when we ask IT entrepreneurs, what is your headache? Among the three first headache they have, the kind of things that don't let them sleep at night, it's growing, and it's growing about the internationalization, because despite it's not really a product, it's a service somewhere, it's very hard for those people to internationalize. So this is the reason with Brussels and Invest and Explore, we wanted to dedicate some time with you, with the right people, in order to give you some idea about how to grow your business through internationalization.
Thank you, Bruno. And I would like to welcome Eric Gavris from the Brussels Invest and Export organization. I'm based in San Francisco.
And if you like exotic fish, you can ask the question to that guy.
You know this as well. Yeah. I have no secret, thanks to internet. Okay, welcome everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. And indeed, as introduced by Bruno, our goal is actually to help you guys sell your stuff, not only in the Silicon Valley, but actually on all the West Coast. And that's actually why I bring Richard to the table today, because when I started the office a few months ago in San Francisco, one of the main requirements coming from companies has been around actually question about how to set up an office over there. And maybe you have heard about some success stories like Orgod, who has just started operation over there, also Softkinetics, they just started their operation in San Diego, in the Southern California. And actually, I noticed that actually nearly every week I receive one or two requests about questions like, which legal entity should I use to set up my operation over there? How can I get a visa? How long will I be able to stay over there? Which bank should I use? Or even people which have not yet established an office over there are asking me, how can I get a banking account over there to do my business there without being a resident of the country? So these are all the questions that are going to be asked to Richard later in the afternoon. And that's going to be a very nice presentation made by a seasoned lawyer. That's already a good thing. But something you will notice as well, and that's not usual for a lawyer, he has also a very good sense of humor. And that's why I appreciate his coming here in Belgium. It's not the first time, I just learned. It's the second time, but I think it's going to be the first time talking about the legal aspect to set up operation in California. So hopefully we'll answer your question, and I will be available later on to answer any specific question about some mission we're going to organize and some events that are going to happen in the future, but we're going to talk about that later on.
Okay, well thank you very much, Eric. So now the next session after the global session will be at 3:30. It will be a MIC Thursday session. So we have here in the room 4 great speakers that you will discover in a few moments. The theme of this MIC Thursday is how IT can help societal changes. And so we have 4 different answers, 2 in the green IT business and 2 in the health business, who will explain to you how they experience it every day in their startup. And then I'm going to call now Ramon for the next session, which will be about co-working and Betagroup.
So, let's see, does it work? No?
Yeah,
Does it
you
work?
can press the button. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ramon. I'm one of the founders of the Betagroup Co-working. If you don't know the Betagroup yet, the Betagroup is the largest network of tech, web, internet, everything that is geeky related professionals in Belgium. We have over 5,000 people that are part of it, and the main purpose of the Betagroup is to promote tech entrepreneurship in this country. It's been at the source of a lot of initiatives, and it runs a surprisingly successful, even for our friends in San Francisco, Chicago, or Berlin, monthly meeting where startups present in front of an audience of 350 people. And you will get to see tonight with Jean Derely, who cannot be here right now because he's running another thing. You will be able to see with him at 6 presentation of 3 startups that will give you a little taste of what a Betagroup is like. And then before that, I will be talking about another one of the initiatives we do to promote tech entrepreneurship, which is the co-working of the Betagroup. This is a shared office space where we go farther than just sharing an office. We try to incentivize, to accelerate serendipity and to increase the business of our members by connecting them, being facilitators for them. So if you want to learn about co-working, we'll have a couple of testimonials from members tonight at 5:15. Will only last about half an hour. You can ask lots of questions. It's going to be very formal. And
Thanks, Romain. And now to end very nicely the day, we have also a Westartup workshop, which will be run by Leo Exter. So here's Leo.
Afternoon, everybody. My name is Leo, and I keep my business. Is it working?
Yes.
And I keep my business at the Betagroup co-working space, and I also work with Jean and Ramon on a very cool initiative called Beta Invest. We connect entrepreneurs with investors directly. So if you're an entrepreneur looking for smart money, Beta Invest is definitely the thing to do. But tonight we'll do something that I take care of most of my time. It's Westartup is a social network for first-time entrepreneurs. And we'll do today a pretty cool exercise. We'll hear pitches from 4 entrepreneurs in various stages of development of their businesses. One is very, very early, still at this stage of discussion. Another one has been running for over 2 years. And all of them have a number of issues they need help with. One of the issues is, well, they need to have your feedback, they need to have your insight, they need to hear your ideas on how they could make the business move forward faster. And that's the whole point of the 7:30 today, the event that we'll do, Westartup Members Night. So you will hear their pitches, and then you'll join group discussions led by some of the very interesting people in the room. I see Gilbert West all the way there in the back. I see Guylaine Bovy, who is right here in the front. So they will help you, they will guide you through the group discussions that you will engage yourself in to help these guys develop their businesses. It's a pretty cool exercise. I've seen a number of people who've been in it and have taken part, so it's going to be fun, guys.
Okay, thank you, Leo, and well, thanks to you all. And now we're going to kick off with the first session, Going Global, Entering the Silicon Valley.
I see you are in a hurry. You are American for something, yeah, right. Just a few words about Richard. Because first of all, thank you very much for coming, because it has been a long trip, and I appreciate that you come to Brussels to present the practical details about entering to the Silicon Valley. A few words about Richard. As I mentioned, Richard is a seasoned lawyer. I don't know if I have to mention that. I don't want to be impolite, but you've been actually practicing for over 40 years, right?
Yes, that's true.
40 years in several companies. Working for any size, could be startups, could be large companies or small companies, as you might consider them, like HP. You have been honored as the IP super lawyer. That's great. Congratulations for that. And you've been talking in various countries. You went to France, to Switzerland, to Korea as well.
I don't think you need to see my calendar. If you look closely, you can see I'm traveling around Europe, visiting clients and giving talks. Can you hear me in the back? Do I need to use the microphone? Okay. I need to give a plug to Eric, though. This is a picture of San Francisco, taken from the entrance to the Golden Gate Bridge, looking back at San Francisco. The area down here is the former Army base, where they used to guard the entrance to San Francisco Bay. Crissy Field, which at one time was a Army airfield, and they thought that this would become the airport for San Francisco. It was a very bad location, and thankfully that didn't happen. This building here in the middle is the Palace of Fine Arts, and it was built in 1915. This whole area is landfill from the earthquake. When San Francisco had its famous earthquake, what were they going to do with all the rubble from all those buildings? Well, they put it on barges and they shipped it around, and they filled in the waterfront here. And in 1915, we had an international exposition, World's Fair, and this building was the center of the World's Fair. And it was built as a temporary building, and it was falling apart until some citizens said, we can't let this building die. It's a monument of San Francisco's history. And so some very wealthy citizens paid to restore the building. There's a nice auditorium in there where they hold film festivals and dance expositions. And right next door to it is a very interesting science exhibit called the Exploratorium, where they have all kinds of interactive displays of technology that's great for children to learn about how sound works, how electricity works, all kinds of fantastic things that happen here. And this, of course, is the San Francisco Pyramid. You would not believe the controversy that existed in San Francisco about the building of that building. The architectural critics were all over the city. How can the city permit this monstrosity to be built? But of course, now it too, like this building, has become identified with San Francisco. And, more important, you can't see it from here because of the angle, but right down behind here is a very important office. It's the office of Belgian Invest.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, let's see. I'm going to do one more here. Okay. Slideshow. There we go. I've already been introduced, and I'll just give you a little bit of my background. It's true. I've been practicing law in Silicon Valley from actually before Silicon Valley was invented. I'm that old. I did my undergraduate work at Berkeley. I spent 3 semesters in the engineering school. The dean of the engineering school took me aside and said, young man, I don't think you're going to make it as an engineer. You don't seem to have much enthusiasm for what we're doing over here in the engineering school. And I said, but you know, if I transfer out of the engineering school, I have to face the biggest challenge of my career, which is taking a language. Every other college at Berkeley, you had to study a foreign language. And I was a student of French in this small town in Michigan. And did I learn any French in this small town in Michigan? No. So I said, I'll take care of this problem the clever way. And at a big university in the United States, one of the things that everyone knows is the importance of the football team to the university's life. And they also know that the football players have all the possibilities of tutors and coaches, and they're told what courses to take because they need to get a C average so that they continue to be eligible to play. So I said, aha, the football team is going to be told which language is the easiest. And I'll do that. And I'll sit in the back of the room with the football players, and I'll get a C, and while I'm on the rowing team, that's okay. I don't have an eligibility requirement. Alas, I studied Swedish. It turned out to be, I later studied Italian. The Italian word for my Swedish experience was disastro. I flunked. And the reason I flunked is that the description of the Swedish course at Berkeley, Swedish Scandinavian Language 101, the underground review, the one written by the students, there was a real boring description of the official description of the course. The underground review is titled Bonds, Beer, and Bergman. So I said, okay, you got football players, you got pretty girls, you got movies, you got beer. What could any young man want, right? Well, the academic senate had been reading the underground review for many years, and they decided that we have to change this. We're an important university. Our Scandinavian program here is supposed to be an important part of the university. So they went to the University of Minnesota, where Swedish is the second language. They brought in a new dean, and he said to the instructors, you will teach even the football players to speak Swedish. Well, the football players got tutors, and they had the blonde girls, and there I am in the rowing team sitting in the back and failing. So I transferred out, but I studied computer science along the way. I rolled forward, went to law school at Duke, and came back to San Francisco and worked for a judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for a year. And then I decided, well, what am I going to do? What law firm should I join? I was headed to New York when one of my colleagues said, no, you should join this law firm in San Francisco that represents just about everybody that's anybody. It was the 5th largest law firm in the United States at the time. And they represented companies all the way from the Bank of America and the Standard Oil Company, and the telephone company, on down to a little company that I was introduced to that came to life as NM Electronics. Any guesses of what NM Electronics turned out to be? Well, this is the story. I was handed this file by one of the partners, and they said, I want you to go down there and introduce yourself to these guys at NM Electronics. They have a trade name problem. So I got the file, and I looked back, and I saw that this company was founded in the law firm's conference room with the initials NM Electronics, and the chairman of the board, at the first meeting of the board, Art Rock, said, this name is not going to work. We need to hire somebody, a brand expert. So they hired Walter Landor, who was a famous brand expert at the time, who worked off of a old converted ferry along the ferry building in San Francisco and threw good parties. And he scouted the territory and came back 2 months later with a recommendation that the board of directors acquire a company. The name of a company in New York was in the television parts business called Intelligent Electronics. And so they bought Intelligent Electronics and changed the name of NM to Intel. And I had the privilege of being one of the young lawyers to work with Intel when they had 50 employees. And just to show you when I said I was there when Silicon Valley was invented, Silicon Valley was invented on January 11th, 1971. My birthday is January 12th, but on January 11th, 1971, I was at Intel. And the reason that that date is the origin of Silicon Valley as we now know it was it's the first time that the word Silicon Valley appeared in print describing the semiconductor companies. Don Hoefler wrote a series of articles in Microelectronic News entitled Silicon Valley, talking about Fairchild, Intel, all the semiconductor companies. And there I was on that day, and so that's how old I am. And I've been in Silicon Valley ever since, representing, as was mentioned, companies from Hewlett-Packard on down to the two guys in the garage. The law firm that I work with now, S&R Denton, is a global law firm. We have 63 offices in 43 countries, including an office here in Brussels. Our largest office is in London. If you look at the map, you can see there are a couple of holes. Brazil, we're working on it. Canada, we're working on it. Continental Europe, Berlin, we're working on it. There's a stealth office in Shanghai, which you can't see because we don't have permission from the Chinese government to use the name yet, but our lawyers are there. So we cover the globe, and we're one of the few law firms, international law firms, that actually has an office in Mauritius, which has some significance because money that comes from Silicon Valley into India goes through Mauritius. Money that comes from Silicon Valley into Africa goes through Mauritius because of favorable tax and corporate law. And so we have a very interesting vehicle for financing growing technology companies through Mauritius. Our office in Silicon Valley is one of the 3 that we have in California, and we're a little boutique. We help technology companies grow from this, which of course is the Hewlett-Packard garage in downtown Palo Alto, to this, which is Hewlett-Packard, which is literally across the street from our office. Over the years, because of Hewlett-Packard, I've become increasingly involved with companies that have their origins and technologies that have their origins outside the United States who want to come to Silicon Valley. Hewlett-Packard asked me to commute to Stockholm in 1990 to handle a pair of international arbitrations that involved the termination of a distributor of workstations who brought a pair of arbitration claims against HP, and my Swedish was no use there. I did learn some, though. It's accounting Swedish, not particularly useful at the local bar. But that put me in touch with the technology lawyers in Europe and put me in touch with, and then led to their clients coming to Silicon Valley and asking me to help them. And so since about 1990, I've been doing that. And one of the things that I realized in helping these young companies was, you know, there are a whole level of practical details that most lawyers don't focus on. So I decided I'm going to create something called the Go-See list. And the word is taken from the New York modeling agency business, where some attractive young lady comes in right off the back of a pickup truck from Oklahoma and goes to the modeling agency and is discovered she's got high cheekbones, she's thin, looks like she can walk, but she needs some training. And so the modeling agency will give her a go-see list. Go see Frederick Foucault and get your hair done. Go see X to, you know, get your makeup taken care of. Go see Y to learn how to walk on the runway. Go see Z to get your teeth straightened, and we'll make you a star. So I developed a go-see list to deal with a lot of the practical things that companies need to understand about setting up operations in Silicon Valley. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. What are the practical things that you need to know to set up operations in Silicon Valley? But before we get to that, I think you need to understand what's actually happened in Silicon Valley and why it has become so important in the world of technology and the growth of technology-based companies. And it actually is depicted on this picture. It's a picture of the Kleiner Perkins office from some years ago, the top of Sand Hill Road. Venture capital was not invented in Silicon Valley. It was invented in Boston after the Second World War. Digital equipment was basically one of the early venture capital-backed companies, where private equity, private money from wealthy individuals pooled together, and investments were then spread across a number of companies so that no one investment would drag down the entire portfolio. It's basically risk spreading. And the history of venture capital is all about risk spreading and growing companies where 5 companies out of 10 will never return any money to the investors. Less than 1 out of 10 will go public. The other 4 will get acquired. And the statistics vary a little bit over time, but that's basically what happens. And that 1 out of 10 and 2 of the 4 that get acquired produce all the returns. The people who invested in Facebook, for example, in the early days, got enough returns to wipe out all the losses for the last 27 years of their investment. It was so successful. Google. Stanford University made $300 million off of Google by licensing technology to Larry and Sergey. Kleiner Perkins put in $10 million, the only venture capital that came into Google, and made $500 million when Google went public. So there's real money to be made. And that effect of real money to be made has attracted lots of money. This is the internet bubble. This is the last quarter of 1999 and the first 2 quarters of 2000. This represents $29 billion invested in a single 3-month period, back to back. In the United States, $29 billion in all venture-backed companies. The mania, the bubble. The thing to note about this is the coloration. The light purple color is the amount of this money that was invested within 50 miles of Palo Alto. It's roughly 35 to 40%. Historically, period after period, 35 to 40% of all of the venture money in the United States gets invested in companies that are within 35, 40 miles of Palo Alto, in Silicon Valley itself. The red is the rest of California, Orange County, San Diego, Los Angeles, a little bit of Sacramento. Between the two, it's 50%. So 50% of all the venture money gets invested in this one state, the state of California. Runner-up for percentage of money, New York and Boston, neck and neck, about 11%. And you got Austin, some in Seattle. But all of the venture money, 50% of all the venture money is invested within 50 miles of Palo Alto. And all of the VCs are there. And what's happened, because of this tremendous level of investment, which as you can see has fallen off, is that everybody else is there. Everybody that a technology company wants to interact with. Microsoft has got a huge campus there. Intel's there, of course. Apple. And lots of companies that many of you have never heard of are there. And lots of foreign companies, because they pester guys like Eric. How do I bring my technology to the place where technology is growing, where my partners are, where the people I need to collaborate with are, where my customers are, where I might have the possibility of finding some of this money? And how do I do that? Okay, now we get down to practical details. How are you going to do that? You have a young technology company here in Brussels, and let me stop for a second. It is true, the perception of Brussels and Belgium in the United States has to do with the European Union bureaucracy. And the vast public doesn't understand that beneath that picture, which we get from the newspaper and the reports from the commissioners and this whole controversy about the euro and what are you going to do about the Greeks and so forth, people don't understand what's going on in major cities around the globe, particularly here in Brussels, about the growth of young technology companies. And one of the things that's really important and creates the necessary infrastructure are the things that these guys are doing. Being an entrepreneur, being an innovator, is a lonely, risky business. You need an infrastructure, a support infrastructure. When you get worried and you can't sleep at night, am I doing the right thing? You need the potential to turn to colleagues who are doing similar things and say, you're an entrepreneur. How do I solve this problem? What do you think? Am I doing this the right way? What should I do? And this actually goes back to the history of Silicon Valley. In those early days when Silicon Valley was being invented and all the semiconductors were along Wolf Road in Cupertino, as the whole business was being developed, the engineers would have the same problem. How do I work this thing called CMOS? How do I design the circuits? What are the problems I have in burning on 100 millimeter wafers, getting enough yield? How do I address these problems? And in one of the seminal studies of the reason that Silicon Valley outpaced Boston, it's a book called Regional Advantage. It's written by a professor at Berkeley. In the introduction, she notes the conclusion, which is this thing called networking, and cites as the example from the semiconductor era. If you were an engineer and you couldn't solve your problem, you went to a bar called the Wagon Wheel, which was conveniently located in the middle of Wolf Road in Cupertino. You bought a beer and you turned to the guy who was sitting next to you and said, do you know anything about CMOS? Yeah, I do. And right then and there'd be an exchange of information, and people would help one another. And that same condition exists today, and it exists in places like you were talking about earlier, where there's this informal exchange of information that raises all the boats at the same time. It's not about the university so much as it's about the propagation of knowledge through this informal system. How do I solve and address practical problems? Lawyers, of course, will tell the engineers, no, it's a violation of your terms of employment to be talking about the secret work that we're doing here at XYZ Technology. So when you see a bunch of technology people standing at the line at the world-famous La Bamba Taqueria, which is a Mexican takeout place, 2 blocks from where Netscape was founded, they only serve lunch, and from 11 to 3 in the afternoon there's a long line. And you've got all these engineers over there for inexpensive Mexican food. They can't eat pizza all the time. And they're standing in line, and they're looking around at one another, and they're saying, hey, what about those Giants? How about the opera last night? Wasn't that great? The weather is terrible. Did they talk about that? No. They talk about the cool things that they're working on, and the hell with what the lawyers told them. And literally, it's this way of spreading knowledge and information that goes on. And we have another gentleman who's part of this ecosystem. Stand up. We have the privilege of hosting this gentleman probably once a month with programs that he puts on at our office, which are all part of this networking. Silicon French and what's the other one? Europort, where they put on programs and seminars and bring in speakers, and we're happy to host that kind of thing. And at those events where there'll be 65, 75 people and good beer, there'll be the same kind of thing that goes on at the La Bamba Taqueria. There are people talking about what they're doing, talking about how they can help one another, exchanging business cards. Do you know somebody at Larry Ellison's place of business? I was thinking I'd just walk up to the front door, hand my card to the receptionist and say I want to talk to Larry. And why do you want to talk to Larry? Well, I've got a new piece of technology that worked very well with their latest release of their database system. You don't want to talk to Larry. That's the wrong person to talk to, even if you could get an appointment. Larry doesn't know what the hell's going on down there. He knows that something important is happening. So what you want to do is find the person who can introduce you to just the right person so you don't waste your time. And it's at programs like Olivier puts on, so through Silicon French and Europort, where, again, this sharing of knowledge and information happens. So, now you've decided to get on the plane and go to Silicon Valley, and you want to know, so what kind of vehicle do I need to establish? Legal vehicle. Well, of course, you could have an agency. You could appoint somebody in California as your agent and have that person promote your products, giving him or her or it a piece of the action. It doesn't support immigration visas. It doesn't support necessarily your own brand building. If you give that company the right to use your brand in connection with this business, there's some risk that they will claim rights to it, and you'll end up stuck in what's called the franchise laws, like McDonald's. So it's not really a very attractive vehicle. You could form a joint venture, which could be an interesting vehicle to have a local entity formed in partnership with Intel or Apple or Verifone, any number of companies, depending on what you're doing. Again, you have the problem of control. And is it building your brand or is it building their brand? And is it going to be a vehicle to move your company forward? You can have a branch office. Brussels Software Limited, a Belgian company, says we're going to open a branch in Silicon Valley. Just get on the plane, put your name on the door. Not a very good idea for tax reasons. A very bad idea for tax reasons. because the United States government says, Belgian Software Limited is now here. The governor of California, we're running a huge deficit. He loves this idea. Because now we're going to tax the earnings and profits of Brussels Software Limited that rarely have anything to do with the United States. So most companies that are doing this set up a subsidiary. Setting up a subsidiary is easy. There's a little state in the east of the United States that has 3 businesses. One is banking. A lot of banks have their offices in this state because they have very liberal banking laws. They have no usury laws, and it's convenient to money centers. Second business they have in this state is the DuPont Chemical Company. The third business, and the one that's important to lawyers, is corporations. They host corporations. Delaware is the state we're talking about, a little itty-bitty state. And if I recall my history, it was once owned by Denmark. I think they traded it in some war. Delaware has made it really easy and efficient to form a corporation. Can you imagine having the certificate of incorporation, which is the fundamental document, sent to the Secretary of State of Delaware to be stamped, to have that sent by email? What an amazing, breathtaking, revolutionary idea. We can't do that in California. Can you imagine having that same document signed by the incorporator, usually the lawyer, where the signature line says /X/Richard Allan Horning and gives my address, with no autograph? Can you imagine such a thing? Electronic signature. We can't do that in California. Can you imagine having the ability to send in documents by this 1840 invention called the facsimile machine to the Secretary of State of Delaware? Up until 4 years ago, we couldn't do that in California. Can you imagine that there's nobody at the Secretary of State in Delaware who really pays much attention to the content of the documents? They don't have a bureaucracy that reads my prose. We have those people in California. If they don't like the commas, they send it back. So what do lawyers do in Silicon Valley? They form Delaware corporations every day, just in the way I explained. They're done like that. You want to be in Silicon Valley, you need a corporation? Call me. I can do it overnight. Then you say, well, okay, what does it actually cost to do that? Well, I have to pay the lawyer, of course. Or you can do it yourself online. It's been known to happen. In fact, when my clients say, you know, I think your fee's a little too high for our young company, and I know you've extended to us generous terms of payment and agreed to carry the costs of the legal services that we require until we have a funding. You know, I think we could save some money by doing this ourselves. So they get the form book, and they do just what I described and send in a form. But they forget a few of the things that the lawyers take care of, like appointing the directors at the time of the corporation being formed. Kind of hard to do that if you don't know what you're doing. So you end up dealing with me anyway. Sooner or later. Sooner or later. And it's more expensive later. So correct the mistakes. So now you have a corporation that's formed. What is Delaware going to tax me? Or lower. The annual franchise tax that you pay to Delaware is $75. That's the annual cost that you pay Delaware. You need an agent for service of process, which is somebody who can receive official documents on your behalf. If you know somebody who lives in Delaware, you've got a cousin who lives there, He or she could be the agent for service of processing. You can avoid paying the $250 that you would pay to a professional organization that does that. The challenge is your cousin gets the pieces of paper from the government and goes on vacation and comes back 6 weeks later and oh, let's see, I thought there were some papers that came from my cousin's company. What was all that about? I wonder what I did with them. And by then some event has happened and you're in trouble, which is where the professional agent for service of process comes in, because they send those documents immediately to me so that they can be accessed. So yes, you can save the $250, but it's not typically a good idea. That's it. That is it. That's Delaware. If you don't have an office, a real office in Delaware, you're not subject to the Delaware income tax. So that's your obligation, your annual obligation to Delaware of having a corporation or a limited liability corporation. $75, $250 for the agent of service process. There are some filing fees that you have to pay to get the Secretary of State to accept these documents. And they have to run a business there. They do a very good business there. Okay, so now we have a Delaware corporation, qualified in Delaware only, but you need to be in Silicon Valley. So the Secretary of State of California says, you know, this Delaware corporation, it's no different than that Belgian corporation. They're both foreign corporations as far as we're concerned. Yeah, Delaware is a little foreign state in the east. So all of you who are working for a foreign corporation need to know that it's Delaware or Belgium. You need to register with the Secretary of State of the State of California. So what does the Secretary of State charge you? To be a registered Delaware corporation or a registered Belgian corporation? I'm going to stop talking about being a registered Belgian corporation because it's a very bad idea. Talk to your tax advisor before you do it, and I get overruled, but I don't think it'll happen. So I'll just talk about Delaware from now on. $200 and a piece of paper that lists who the officers are. And now your Delaware corporation is registered in California. Now you have a choice to make at the beginning. And the choice is based upon how you want this corporation in Delaware, registered in California, to be treated for U.S. income tax purposes. Look at it.
Yeah, just for the purpose of people here, the C corporation is similar to an SPRL in Belgium, and the limited liability corporation to an SA.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm coming to. The United States recognizes, for tax purposes, two different styles of companies. The C corporation is a corporation that's taxed as a corporation, as the earnings and profits of that company are made. The U.S. government and the state government tax it only on the net earnings and profits. DuPont, General Motors, General Electric, and Belgian Software Inc. are all taxed as C corporation if you make that election. The second one, and the one that gets talked about, is a limited liability corporation, where you're still taxed on the earnings and profits, but you're not taxed at the company level. The owners are taxed. Now, this is good for you, but the federal government says, wait a minute, we've got this Belgian who owns 75% of this company, who's making money and having no tax at the corporation. He gets supposed to be taxed on his 75%, and he's over there in Brussels drinking beer, eating boules of frites, and not paying us. So how are we going to do this? Well, we have what's called a withholding tax, where the corporation that has these foreign owners will be subject to a 35% tax across the board. irrespective of distribution of money.
But
To make sure we get it.
the owner would be the Belgian company.
It could be. It could be. It could be. In this scenario, it could be a Belgian company that owns the 75% instead of you personally. But it's the same problem. The government says, how do we get the money? Because those guys over in the Belgian company are hosting grand parties and they're drinking champagne out of the profits that they earned, but we didn't get to collect the tax because we don't have anybody that can go over and get it. So they say, well, we're going to do withholding tax. Now, so for tax purposes, this is not a very efficient vehicle. It is used in another context, however. The charter documents of a limited liability company have a lot more flexibility in them than a regular corporation. You can have all kinds of structures and divisions of interest that are built into the corporate foundation documents that are difficult to achieve in the context of a regular corporation. So if you want to have a design where you as an owner get 75% of all the royalties off of some particular product, but you only own 25% of the capital stock of the company, this is where you could have a limited liability in LLC where the design built into the corporate charter says that. You still have the tax problem, however, and the solution to that is you check the box and you say, we want the limited liability company that has this unusual design to be taxed as a corporation. So the money comes off the top of the corporation and then it gets divided up and so on. So there is a flexibility in this model that is sometimes used. It's used a lot in the joint venture context where you have two companies that are coming together, a big one and a small one, and they want to have a division of the pot that's less than 3 for you, 1 for me. So it's sometimes there, but almost every company that I've dealt with that sets up a subsidiary in the United States, 100% owned by the foreign company, is set up as a C corporation in Delaware and qualified in California or wherever else they want to do business. Could be that the business is facilitated by having an office in Miami Beach. Could be. Johnny Versace's palace is up for sale. It'd be a good corporate office. As it has a little bit of history to it. Perhaps not as attractive as you might think, but anyway, so it's the same if you want to be in Florida instead of California. It's the same thing. Delaware Corporation, qualified in Florida, qualified in California, wherever you want to have an office, a real office. Now, back to the go-see list. Companies will come to me and say, we need to get this corporation set up today. We need to have an office today. What can you do to help us? And I say, well, let's see here. Let's just see. I pull out my business card. And I look at the address and I say, how would you like Belgian Software Inc. to have an office at 1530 Page Mill Road, Suite 200, Palo Alto? There are probably 36 companies that are all subsidiaries of some foreign enterprise that have offices there. We have a lot of parties when they're not around. We take care of their mail. Their bank statements come to us and we forward them on by email. And to the extent that we have empty offices, we allow you to come and sit. Use our internal network. You're a client firm. We're happy to help you. That's our business, is to help you grow the company. You'll need a real office someday, but in the early days, we're happy to use this as a mail drop. So that's what I do. Okay, so let's get down to some other details. Now we got the Delaware Corporation. The question gets asked, so who can be officers and directors of this company? This subsidiary. We have no nationality requirements.
We'll take anybody. We're gonna have 2 Belgians and 3 Croats, that's okay. Directors, people who are on the board of directors, are not necessarily employees of the company. They're just directors. The directors don't do anything other than provide guidance and management. They tell the officers, we think it's a good idea to have an office in California. We think it's a good idea to open a bank account at XYZ Bank. You, Mr. President, and Madam Vice President, you see to it. You're an officer of the company. You sign the pieces of paper. You sign the lease. You negotiate the lease. We've approved the idea of having the office. That's our job. You take care of the details. And so that's the role of the officers. There are 3 statutory officers, President, Secretary, Treasurer. They can all be the same person. No nationality requirement. We'll come back to this nationality requirement in a minute, however. And Delaware law says you can hold a meeting any way you want to. Skype video, no problem. You can hold virtual meetings where just a piece of paper gets sent around for signature by the directors with no meaning at all, as long as they all sign the documents, electronically signed. So the corporate governance of a Delaware subsidiary is really easy, can be done from here. I'm usually elected as the assistant secretary of the company, and there's a practical reason for this. There are sometimes circumstances where you need a local representative who can sign documents on behalf of the company as authorized by the board of directors or authorized by one of the officers. For example, state of California forms, like the renewal of the registration. I don't need, if I'm the assistant secretary, I don't have to send it over here to Belgium to find you, and have you sign it and send it back. I just sign it as the assistant secretary and it's done. There are circumstances where you need 2 signatures on a document, like a share certificate. Since I'm preparing them, I sign one of them, and then I find you. Belgium, where we meet in, let's see, some sunny place. Belgium? The Azores, Costa Brava. Yeah, Costa Brava. We have a signing ceremony, and then we drink the local crushed grape product. The same thing about the elections for the board itself. You have a single parent company. A decision is taken here. Who's going to be the officers and directors of the company? That's it. Signed pieces of paper. It still needs to be managed. The board still needs to have oversight over what's happening with the company. But there's not a lot of layer of bureaucracy, and it's easy enough to do without a lot of overhead. Okay. Another interesting feature of Delaware, and most states in the United States, is that unlike the situation in Europe, most of Europe, there's no minimum capital requirement. The state of Delaware doesn't care if there's a penny invested in this company. Minimum capital. You do need money, however, because the bank, you need a bank account. It's kind of hard to convince a bank to open up an account if you're not going to put any money in. So almost all of the subsidiaries that I form put up at least $10,000 as the minimum capital. Part of that $10,000 goes to pay all these fees that go to the Secretary of State and my fee. The other part goes into the bank account. And inside the bank account, it gets used for a very important purpose. Because we have no minimum capital requirement in the United States, and because the financial results of this little company, Belgian Software Inc., incorporated in Delaware and having an office on Page Mill Road, they don't get published anywhere. No one knows how the company is doing. You don't file them with the government. You don't get filed with anybody. Nobody knows. We have credit rating agencies that are supposed to keep an eye on. So, if I extend credit, if I sell let's take a cell phone subscription. Go to the AT&T store, say I'm here, I want to get a cell phone taken out in the name of Belgian Software Inc. The people go into the back room and they look up Belgian software in the database of credit rating agencies. They say, we're going to give this person a phone that's worth $600, an Apple iPhone, at a discounted rate of $199, provided that the company commits to a 2-year subscription. Well, we're extending credit to that company. How do we know we're going to get the subscription over the 2-year period? What's the credit rating of this company? So, what's the bank account? We can't see their financial results. The bank isn't going to tell us how much they have on deposit other than what they tell the credit rating agency, which is the credit rating agencies call the bank. And they say, we're doing a little background check on Belgian Software Inc. What's their history as a customer of your bank? Oh, they keep between, their balance varies between 4 and 5 figures. Okay, let's see, it's just under 10,000 and just over 10,000, or a broader range. That's what they tell us. So how about their activity? Oh, we see maybe transactions that range between 6 and 12 a month. Okay, what about the average size of those transactions? Oh, they range between $6.95 to $695. What does that tell you about this company other than they have an activity level? Have you gotten any reports at the bank about checks that didn't clear? No? Their credit is good as far as we're concerned. Have you gotten any reports that their customers have been delayed in payment? As far as we know, they're good. Your customers will do the same thing. If you go to let's take AT&T, you've gotten your Apple iPhone in the name of the company, Apple reports, with AT&T reports record, to the credit rating agency, the extended credit to Brussels Software Inc. So what was the credit? Well, we can't tell you the details, but let's just say $60 times 2 years, give or take. That's the line of credit that we get. So that's, now I'm a new customer. I want to know, am I going to extend credit to this company? I look up that history. Having entries in the credit rating history is a good thing. The more increase, the better. So how do we get more increase in the credit rating system? We get a corporate credit card. We get a credit card from the bank that we use when we buy that phone at AT&T. So what happens? AT&T now enters in this transaction, just as I described it, and all that data goes into the credit history report. The credit card company enters that same data about the purchase for $199 because he used the corporate credit card. And he paid it off at the end of the month when the bill was presented. So now, for the same transaction, you've got 2 separate entries, all related to the same thing. So you've multiplied the activity level artificially by using a corporate credit card. As long as you pay it off regularly, and don't get caught with 23% interest, you have this multiplier effect. So who's going to give you a corporate credit card when you don't have any credit rating? Well, the bank. The bank says, well, how do I know we're going to get paid? You give us $5,000 on deposit, and we give you a $5,000 line of credit on your credit card. If you don't pay it, we'll grab your $5,000. So that part of the $10,000 goes there. $5,000 line of credit. This has real life implications, really important implications. One of my clients, I didn't set up this company. It was a Finnish company, set up a subsidiary in the United States. It was an e-commerce company. They asked me to help them with some IP issues. I didn't have anything to do with the corporate setup. The founder of the company goes to Wells Fargo Bank and says, we're launching our site next week. We need an e-commerce line of credit of $50,000 to help, finance the business. They go to the credit rating report, credit rating agencies, and say, your company has no credit rating. And the founder says, she says, how can this be? We've done lots of activity. Yeah, you used your personal credit card and got reimbursed by the company. The company has no credit rating. You have a very good credit rating, but the company has none. I'm sorry, but it's going to cost you a lot to have us provide you with an e-commerce line of credit because you have no credit rating. Now, in that particular case, she was able to talk them out of this fee that they wanted to charge her because she had no credit rating. But there are practical implications to not having a credit rating and not using this system to maximize the value of your credit rating. If you're going to enter into a lease, you know, by anything that has extended terms of payments, somebody is going to look up your credit history. And the more entries you have, the more responsible you look, the easier it is for people to grant you credit. Okay, we talked about qualification in California. Tax ID. You know, the government wants to know, for tax purposes, give you an identification number. So how do you get one? There are two ways. One is somebody who already has a tax identification number, like an individual, a social security number. So your cousin who lives in San Francisco says, fine, I'll lend my social security number to the founding of this company and get your tax ID for you. Or we can have you go through a very painful process of getting a certified copy of your passport with an apostille and send that in to the federal government, and 6 weeks later, as long as it's been done right, we'll give the company a tax identification number based upon your passport and an apostille saying, yeah, this is a real passport. Now, you can do it that way, but the assistant secretary usually takes care of that. Those dozen companies that are supposedly at my place of business in Palo Alto have my social security number identified with their tax identification number. Employer ID. Once you start employing people in California on your payroll, you need to get a second number from the state of California because you have to deal with a lot of taxes and benefits and insurances that are all related to the employment relationship. Until you have somebody on your payroll, you don't need one. Even after you start having employees, we'll talk in a minute about another way to deal with the employment issues. You need a bank account. There are plenty of banks in Silicon Valley. Between Silicon Valley Bank and Bridge Bank and Comerica Bank, 85% of the startups are banked by one of those three banks. Silicon Valley Bank having about 50%. Bridge Bank being number 2. I can get you an account at Bridge Bank or Silicon Valley Bank. Get you introduced to Bridge Bank or Silicon Valley Bank and get you. The account will happen virtually overnight. I'll need a copy of your passport, but it does need an apostille. And you'll have to have a telephone interview. We do have this know your customer rule, but it's kind of lightweight compared to what happens over here if you get a bank account open. Send in the corporate documents, send in your passport photo. You're going to be the signatory in the account. They call you, say, are you a real live guy? No, what's the story in the company? Yeah, okay, fine. Here's your account number by return mail. General liability insurance, you definitely want to have that. Even if there is no activity, it doesn't cost a lot. Somebody might come to our office looking for you because they think that's where your address is and they think you have an actual physical office there. And somehow there's a banana peel left on the foyer and they slip on the banana peel and they break their hip and they say, well, why are we there? Well, we were coming to call upon Belgian Software Inc. at this address, and they didn't keep the banana peels off the floor, so I need to get my hip taken care of by this company. That's where the insurance comes in. And we say as the law firm, oh, we don't know these guys at Belgian Software Inc. It was their fault that the banana peel was there. So that's a pretty absurd example. But general liability insurance is a backup to the no minimum capital requirement and no reports of the earnings and profits or stated capital of the company. And it arises out of a practical problem, which is without an adequate capital, a court could say that banana peel problem, that's the problem of the Belgian parent company, because the company was inadequately capitalized, didn't have enough money, and didn't have the insurance, so we're going to make sure that the old lady with a broken hip gets taken care of by having the parent company in Belgium pay for it. So you're looking through the company. Not a good idea to not have general liability insurance. Okay, taxation. There's a tax treaty. I'm not a tax guy. I pay taxes. I have somebody fill out the forms for me and just write the check. You should know that the American tax system for companies is based upon net earnings and profits. So if you're a startup, there aren't any of those. California has an $800 minimum tax that may be applicable depending on your circumstances. There's no minimum tax at the federal level. You do have to file the returns even if you don't owe any tax. The losses get carried forward for a number of years. You can be applied against profits earned later. You see portrayed there the graduated corporate tax rate system. California also has a graduated tax rate system that peaks at 9.6%, if I'm not mistaken. There's a tax on dividends when you send money back home to Belgium. As a dividend, you pay tax on it to the federal government. And then we have the partnership tax, which I talked about earlier in the context of the limited liability company, the 35% withholding tax. Employment. I'll just finish up with this part. Every country has their own requirements for who can be employed by a company. The United States is no different from Europe. If I wanted to come to work here, I need to get a work permit. We have the same system in the United States. You need to get a work visa issued by the federal government. It's illegal for a U.S. company to employ someone who's not a citizen or a green card holder or someone who holds a valid work permit. And there's a big crackdown going on because the United States suffers from a lot of illegal immigration. And every once in a while the government will have a crackdown and round up a bunch of people at the meatpacking plant and find out that 3/4 of the workforce are illegal immigrants. They pack them back to Mexico and a new crowd of illegal immigrants takes their place. But for companies in Silicon Valley, you don't want to get into that game. So you need to get a work permit, a work visa. The two most popular are L1, which is the intercompany transfer of executives. The theory there is the Belgian parent company is sending people here to the United States to build a subsidiary and start employing people. Duh, says the government, why wouldn't we want that to happen? So, what's the rule? You have to work for the parent company for at least a company in the group for at least a year, 365 days, and that number of days has to take into account every day that you're in the United States for whatever reason. So if you went to Las Vegas for 2 weeks to the trade show in January, it's 365 days plus 2 weeks. You need to be a senior executive of the company, you need to have a university degree, and you need to get a clean report from the local police department. And pitch the government that this is a real enterprise and not some scam that is designed to get you into the United States and put you on the unemployment rolls and get you into our modest compared to Europe, social support network. The other one is an H-1B visa. H-1B. There's a quota on those every year. At the moment, that quota is not being filled. That quota has gone up and down. In the bubble era, the employers lobbied Congress and got the number put up to 250,000 a year, and they were gone like that. Now the number is about 60,000, and they're not being used. We have a high unemployment rate, and less people coming to the United States. The qualification there is special skills that can't be found locally. You have to post a job notice that says, I need somebody with these skills. I need a Unix programmer who knows something about, what was that ancient language? Fortran. Because we have to connect with a bunch of really old legacy systems. And we know how to do that here at Belgian Software Inc. So we need somebody that knows how to do that. And they need to speak, how many languages are common here? 6 languages? Because we have customers all over the world. So you post that job requirement. And they need a university degree. Doesn't have to be from Belgian university, just a university degree. Maybe it has some special characteristics that they only pass out degrees like this in UVA, right? So that's the job posting. It's optimized for this person who doesn't have the 1 year, and we're going to bring them over. The catch is, from the company's standpoint, unlike the executive transfer, where the government doesn't care what you pay this person. You could pay them their salary here, which is probably below market in Silicon Valley, as the president of the company. When we bring this guy over, with all these special characteristics, we have to do a salary survey that says, if we found somebody like this in Silicon Valley, what would we have to pay him? What's the going rate at Google for somebody with these particular characteristics? $175,000 a year, plus benefits, probably. Probably higher in the case that I just described. That's a pretty rare combination. So you have to prove to the government that you're not undercutting the local wage rates by using this H-1B visa. And the visas are good for 1 or 2 years. And then it can be renewed or not renewed depending on the results of the company. You can't, in California, you can't enforce a non-compete clause. If I go to work for Intel, I can quit and go to work for AMD the next day. If I go to work for Google, I can go to work for Microsoft the next day and work on Bing. California has this long established public policy: we will not enforce a non-compete clause in an employment contract, which has been good for Silicon Valley. That's not true elsewhere. If you were in Boston, you could enforce a non-compete clause, and maybe that's the reason that we went ahead and they didn't. Most employees in California will expect at some point to be participating in the equity growth of the company. As the value of the company increases, how do I get to participate and benefit from that? After all, I'm helping grow the company. That's where the stock option plan comes in. The stock option plans in the United States are all templates. They're relatively easy to create. The problem is integrating it with corporate law and securities law and employment law in your home country here in Belgium. What are the tax ramifications of having a stock option plan? And in some places, it can get really complicated. For example, in Sweden, you couldn't possibly have the kind of stock option plan that we have in the United States, where I say, I'm going to employ you as the Vice President of Technology. I'm going to grant you options on 100,000 shares of the parent company's stock at $1 a share, which is the fair market value today. You have to work for a year to be vested in 25% of that, the right to buy 25% of that 100,000, and the rest will be vested over a 3-year period thereafter. So after 4 years, you have the right to buy all of that 100,000 shares for $1. And the idea is, well, the value of the stock will go up in the meantime. So you get your return as the value goes up. There's no tax on the grant of that option. There's no tax on you holding that option. The only tax comes in when you exercise that option. And depending on when you sell it, you either qualify for ordinary income tax treatment of the gain or long-term gain. In Sweden, that kind of a stock option would be considered compensation. Compensation to the employee. You have to pay tax on it, the value of that option, and the company has to pay tax on it, and the social tax on top of that. Not a very good picture. So France is a little more liberal in terms of the way they treat stock options. Finland is closer to the United States. Estonia, they don't care. They're treated like the United States. There's no personal income tax in any country. For this. So, access to local capital. We talked about the credit rating system. Everybody dreams of coming to Silicon Valley and getting that pot of money that represents the bubble and what's left of it. There's probably today $60 billion of organized capital at the top of Sand Hill Road looking for good deals. That number is a little misleading because about a third of it is already committed to follow-on investment in previous deals, maybe even half. And depending on the life of the fund, after about 3 years, it's mostly committed. 3 years out of the 10. There's an equal, if not larger, amount of angel capital and super angel capital, not organized with managing partners and the kind of structures that exist on Sand Hill Road. So there's a lot of money around. But the boys and girls on Sand Hill Road are pretty lazy. Why should we drive more than 50 miles to see our client? We have so many deals around here. I don't want to go, I love Brussels, and my wife loves coming and have meals and treats. But do I want to go there every quarter for the board meeting? And more important, do I want the president flying over every 2 weeks to talk to me? So, number one rule, you got to have a really strong executive team that's in Silicon Valley. The pitching, all this interaction, getting the first meeting, and then the next meeting, and the next meeting, and the next meeting, leading up to a term sheet. You can't do this by flying back and forth. And the VCs don't want you to. They want the executive leadership of the team mostly to be there. The CTO, I'm sorry, you can stay in Brussels, and the CFO, we don't need him, but the chief marketing officer, the president of the company, the people are going to drive the customer interface process, the joint venture process, the interaction with supplier process, other than the financial aspects. They need to be around where we can help them. After all, the whole idea behind venture capital is not just the money. We want to be on the board and we want to help you because we've got a huge list of connections and we're going to see that you get properly introduced to our portfolio companies and to everybody else in the valley that you need to do business with, and I'll make the phone calls. And that's supposedly what the VCs are supposed to add to the money and why they make profits, unlike banks. Get interest and don't give you any support. So you got to be there, and with some rare exceptions, they will require that the Belgian parent company become a Delaware company. All the investors in the Belgian company now will become investors in the Delaware parent company, and that can be a problem, depending on the tax consequences. When I hand you, I say, give me your registration papers for your share certificate, your ownership interest in the Belgian parent company. I'll give you this piece of paper with a grading on it that says Belgian Software Holdings Limited in Delaware. What's it worth? And the taxwoman here in Belgium says, taxable transaction, maybe. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Belgian tax law. But it could be, and so that is sometimes a problem. The reason that MySQL sold to Sun Microsystems for $1 billion, remained a Swedish company throughout its existence, even after Benchmark put in $100 million of equity, is because the company was like 9 years old at the time the $100 million was put in, and the valuation of the company skyrocketed, and there was no money for the investors. None of that $100 million went into their pocket, so they got a tax problem. The Swedish government said, wait, you bought that shares 9 years ago for a penny, and now it's worth $110 a share because of the valuation? Send me my kroner. So Benchmark said, okay, there's too much crying and screaming. We'll invest in the Swedish company, even though we don't really want to know anything about Swedish corporate law. We don't have our meetings in Sweden. But we'll be exiting soon anyway, so 3 years later they did. So it can be a problem, this flip. But I've done these. It's a lot of planning to do it. The earlier you do it, the less the tax consequences. Having local capital usually implies board seats. So you have to give up a percentage of the company. So you need to deal with the usual terms of finance, of equity. And it's all, at the end of the day, all those meetings at the top of Sand Hill Road or in Menlo Park where the VCs have their offices end up with something called a term sheet which outlines the deal. And then it's on that basis that the lawyers do the rest of the work, creating the stock documents like so, most of which have been created before. They all pass around the same forms. Paragraph 5 is always the same in everybody's documents. You know, the system has evolved, and we realize as lawyers, it's not really a good deal to be trying to customize documents when the customization is not adding any value. And we're going to be back at it again tomorrow, so let's just use the standard terms and let's haggle over the, all right, you only get one board seat and an observer seat instead of 2 board seats. Your rights to control the company in terms of veto over some of the company's activities, like borrowing money. We need that number to go from $50,000, which you wanted, to $150,000. So that we can borrow up to $150,000 without getting approval of the investors. So it's that kind of dialogue that goes on. But the structure of preferred shares and board seats and things that you can have control over or not, what happens next, all that's been worked out over time. Fairly standardized. Term sheet, credit rating system. When you go to Sand Hill Road, this is what the VCs want to talk about. I'm not going to go into it. The most important part of that process is this. They're not investing in companies that can't scale and grow. They're not investing in lifestyle companies. They're not investing in companies that are going to pay dividends. They're investing in companies that are going to exit. Their business plan is dependent upon growing the company and getting it IPO'd or sold off within the life of the fund, which is 10 years, plus the possibility of a 3-year extension. So when they put money into Belgian Software Inc., they're saying this company is going to have to do something, show its stuff, and get us out and get us a return within 10 to 13 years. Scaling. And then is the scaling going to require another $100,000 for every $1 million in sales? $100,000 in capital. Or is the company going to grow without that kind of addition to create more sales? Can the company grow without multiplying the workforce 10x for every $100 million worth of sales? Protectability and monopoly is sort of the flip side of the same thing. What unfair advantage do we get out of the intellectual property protection system? Patents, copyrights, trademarks, trade secrets. How do we keep Danish Software Inc. out of our marketplace? You're a fierce rival. Do we have a patent on this combination of Unix and Fortran? Some clever way of doing things? Is there some secret that we haven't told anybody about that we can keep to ourselves, and the Danes will have to struggle to invent around it or come up with the same idea? It's all about unfair advantage. We want that. We want to have dominance in our market. We want to have all these unfair advantages. And the exit plan. And the top one, number one on the hit parade is the team. Who are the people that we're giving our money to? What do we know about this guy? Oh yeah, we saw his CV. But beyond that, what do we know about him? Who's vetted him? Who knows him? Who's worked with him? Is this person flexible or hard-headed, stubborn, obstinate to a negative degree? The history of Silicon Valley is one where this came home in the early days. And it is repeated today in the context of something called Plan B. When the VCs gave Belgian Software the money, there was a business plan. Studies have shown that 75% of all those business plans of VC-backed companies got changed within 6 months. The pivot, as it's called, getting to Plan B. And that's actually the title of the book on the subject, written by Randy Commissar, who's a partner at Kleiner Perkins and a professor at University College London, where they studied. So, what happened to the business plan that UVCs invested in? Did it get followed, or did it get changed dramatically? And the answer was 75% of all those business plans got changed. So, if you're a hard-headed, stubborn person who says, we're doing it my way, that's going to be a problem. Maybe we don't want to give you our money. Because in the back of our minds, we know we might have to deal with this, get this Plan B problem. What companies have you grown before? What's your track record? How can you demonstrate the ability to lead this company forward and make money for us, your investors and partners? So they want to know that. You don't have to have the complete team. They may help you fill in the blanks, but they want to know, in your case, we're going to bring people over here, president, chief marketing officer, chief sales officer, people interfacing with customers, do they have the right stuff? Do they have the ability to convince us that they've got the right stuff? But more important, as we look at them from the eyes of customers and strategic partners and the broader community in Silicon Valley, are these the people that are going to have successful relationships there? They're going to build the company. If that's not there, then why should we give them the money? So, that's it. Now it's time for questions, or not, depending on whether how long I extend my time. Okay. Oh, there we go.
I understood out of your story that you take a lot of the tasks to your responsibility to sign whatever, guarding papers, sending bills through, and so on. It's a dumb question, but what if you die? What if you went away? It's a dumb question, but
That's a funny one.
I know it's a hard question, but somebody got to ask you.
Actually, it's an easy answer. I'm in a law firm where we keep these things around and available to the people in the law firm. They're not my documents, they're the law firm's.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I get hit by a bus, there'll be a big parade. I'll discover I've got all these little clients and supposedly have offices there. In exchange for, they can't work more than 20 hours a week. They can't run fancy equipment, and they get paid or not. Gaining experience. For foreigners, this system has allowed companies like Google or HP or others to use a separate portion of the visa system to bring people in to work as interns. Sponsored by the company, they have to leave after some period of time with little prospect of permanent employment at HP or Google or whatever, in the absence of some petition to change their status and a lot of complaining and crying to the government. No, don't send this guy back. We can't live without him. He was a great intern. He developed some great technology for us. Let him stay, give him an H1 or give him an L1 or give him some other kind of, an O1. Heroic efforts. Yehudi Menuhin. They get O1s. Who's a famous European singer? I was going to say Lady Gaga, but she's American.
No.
Bono would get an O1 visa, so he could come and work in the United States. Benefit out of this, it's not just pressing the photocopy button, which is one of the things that has caused this whole process to fall into disrepute, because companies were getting interns who were not getting any real work experience. They were just pressing the photocopy button. Or cheap.
Did you start your initial team with, like, instead of employees, with consultants? And that way circumvent the visa and other requirements?
Well, how are they going to stay in the United States, right? Why is it that you keep coming to San Francisco on the same flight, connecting through Frankfurt? However you guys connect. So the question is going to be asked after a number of trips. How come you keep coming here? And the next time you come, you better have a work permit, work visa.
But even as president or
Yeah. In fact, I'm not sure that my friends who do immigration law would agree with what I'm about to say. One of the ways that you cut down the risk of having these questions asked of you, let's suppose that you are the president of the U.S. company, but you don't have a visa. You're also the president of the Belgian parent company. You don't have a business card that connects you with the U.S. company. You travel always as the president of the Belgian company, and you're here to visit the subsidiary. Go to a board meeting to assist the team, but I'm not doing real work. I'm here to have champagne and celebrate the milestones that we just achieved, and then I'm going back. It's because the truth is the law of employment relationships, which is built into this, you must have a work visa, is not. They'll tell you come back the next time with a work visa or all that. Yeah. Never happened to me, of course, but I'm told that this has happened. So if you're going to be an officer of the U.S. company, don't carry a business card that says that. Be the president of the foreign company. Be a member of the board of directors, but don't have a business card that has a U.S. address. You don't need one. If you're going to call on customers in aid of the U.S. subsidiary, why wouldn't they receive the president of the Belgian company? The big man's here. Help sell.
Let's say that.
Sorry.
Let's say that I have a one-person company providing services to American companies. So I want to go to the United States. I want to set up a company. But how do I stay there to really perform work? I mean, how do you get a work permit from me? And can I stay there for a long time?
For you, there's another system that might be useful. Again, I don't pretend to be a specialist in immigration law, but given what I've done for a living over those many years, I know how the system works. For you, there are a series of visas that are investor-related visas, where you commit to make a certain level of investment in the United States, and we'll give you one of these visas that allows you to stay and potentially get a green card.
If I sell services to an American company, let's say consultancy services about how to get into Europe.
Well,
I have to go there very frequently.
Well, no, but do you need a U.S. company to do that?
No, but can I?
You can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I have a Belgian company, can I go there very often?
Well,
and stay there for a few months?
Again, in your case, your business plan is assisting U.S. companies in Belgium, and you're there to call on your customers as a representative of the only company that exists, which is the Belgian company. So you may not fall in the category we're talking about there. You may get questioned at the airport.
How long can I stay there? How often can I go there?
It's the duration of a, what is it, I-94, the thing you get at the airport is 6 months. I think that's it.
Great.
Huh? Great? Maybe 6, but whatever.
You have the visa. Because if you have the visa waiver, then it's unlimited.
Yeah.
To 3 months.
Yeah.
3 months, that's it, yeah. 3 months is the new European passport, which has a visa waiver.
Right.
And there the customer can just say, they say, are you here to work? I can say, yes, I work, but for...
No, I'm calling on my customers because I work for them in Europe. I don't work in the United States. No. Besides, you wouldn't want the government to take some of the money from you. You tell the U.S. government you're working in the United States. Where are those little green pieces of paper with dead American heroes on them? On the 15th of April.
In terms of like the 90 days or 6 months within a year, does exit into a NAFTA country make any difference? I mean, if you were to pop over to Canada for a few weeks, and you then come back in, would you get a stamp as you were?
Same thing. You're still going to pass through an immigration.
Yeah. But
office, and they're going to have your name in the computer, and you exited and come back in.
is it better to go to an NAFTA country or to not go to?
No, it's still entry into the United States.
I think there's also the difference between the solution at the beginning, where you can do back and forth all the time for 1 year, 2 years, maybe. But then, on the long range, you don't want to do the complete business. So at some point, you will need to make the move to create the C Corp Delaware and get. If you really want to do the business in the US at the long term, you will need to create that. To evaluate if this is worth to get there and then to do business, then of course using Trish Visa is working, and again different ways to do it.
And that's why I said getting started with.
Yes, to get started with that's okay, but then at some point, and that's what happened with all the people I know who get from Belgium or from other countries to the US. At some point, you need to find the legal.
The Delaware company. You've just eliminated the possibility of getting an L1 visa because you don't have an intercompany transfer policy. The money comes to the parent company. In the case of the independently owned company, it comes to the 5 of you guys. So if you can do it, it might work, and it might work if the structure of the independently owned company.
Forward event. It's going to be right now. We have the dates between the 26th and the 30th of November. What is it? Well, it's a trade mission in the valley, where we'll do some crash course, a little bit in the continuation of what was done today, but meeting some of the actors. We'll have some B2B meetings with the help of Eric here to really answer your needs, and then finally there'll be some networking opportunities during this time. What we want is really to make sure that it's customized to the different companies that participate. We have in mind to have between 5 and 7 companies, no more, because we want a small delegation that's manageable, and we want to make sure that every company gets the best out of the B2B meetings. Who? Well, we want innovative Brussels ICTs SMEs ready to invest and to export in the North American markets. And so what we're looking at is interested company, and we'll give the details later on, and then we'll start a whole process with the company to make sure that we can sample the best one or the one that have the highest potential. As I said, it's facilitated by both our agency. I'll just leave Eric the opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the help that companies can get to facilitate this visit.
So actually the spirit of the mission will not be like some of the missions that were previously organized in the Silicon Valley, which is more related to what I used to call the corporate tourism. What we really want to focus is on your needs. So we will be organizing in the first part of the session, as mentioned by Johan, some presentation done by some of your colleagues, actually, Richard, and actually you will be introduced to incubators, for instance. So that's the ideal location if you want to start your business in the Silicon Valley. We're going to introduce you also to some bankers and to some venture capitalists as well, so that the funding is put in place. So really, you're going to have during this week the opportunity to meet all the key players that can help you establish your activities in the Silicon Valley. So that's our goal. And on top of that, because it's good to have all the infrastructure in place, but at the end of the day, you need customers as well. So the goal of this mission is as well to organize some B2B meetings with key players, but also some smaller players that might be of your interest and which are actually directly connected to your business. We don't intend to make that many meetings, like going all together to Google to visit their premises. It might be nice, but if we do organize that, it's going to be considered as a side-on event and not really the main point of the mission. So that's the spirit of the mission we want to have, to be very pragmatic, and I hope together with you we can have a successful event over there. So I want to stop now. I think thank you, Yuan, for helping me to introduce this mission. I think it's time for a break for 15 minutes, right? Maybe you want to say a few words about the program afterwards?
Now we can have a short break of 15 minutes, and then we'll be here at 4 in the room for the next Thursday presentation, and we'll stop with the green Friday.